Good day everyone. Our topic for today is all about average velocity and instantaneous velocity. So let's start. The first one is average velocity. And the question is, what is average velocity? Average velocity by definition is equal to displacement over time. Or sa ibang books, makikita natin ito ay delta x over delta t. Or simply change in position over change in time. In other words, average velocity is equivalent to how far you've traveled all over how long it took you to get there. Now, let's say f of x be our position function, and the average velocity is equivalent to f of x of 0 plus h minus f of x of 0 all over h, wherein f of x of 0, ito yung ating initial position or the position when you started, and f of x of 0 plus h, this is your position after a little while. So, yung h natin, yun yung a little while. All over, yung syempre yung a little while or yung time it take you to get there. Also, this concept is also known as the average rate of change. Okay, so let's have some example. Find the average velocity of the function f of x is equal to 1 plus 3x minus 2x squared on the interval 1, 5. First thing to do, we need to know what is the starting time or yung ating x sub 0. So yung x sub 0 natin, siya yung starting time, and in our interval, yun ay 1. Kaya yung ating x sub 0 is equal to 1. Next, how about the elapsed time? So from 1 to 5, gaano katagal yun? So it should be 4 kasi 5 minus 1. So, yung ating h or yung time is equal to 4. Bakit ulit naging 4? 5 minus 1. So, yun yung elapsed time. We can now use the formula for average velocity. We have f of x of 0 plus h minus f of x of 0 all over h. Substitute all the given values. X of 0 is equal to 1 and yung h natin is equal to 4. So, we have the average velocity is equal to f of 1 plus 4 minus f of 1 all over 4. Next, pwede rin natin siyang i-rewrite in this form. So, we have 1 plus 4 is 5. So, f of 5 minus f of 1. And yung 4 sa denominator, paano natin siya nakuha? Should be 5 minus 1. Now, meron tayong ma-recall na concept dito sa itsura ng ating average velocity. F of 5 minus f of 1 all over 5 minus 1. Now, let's say 1 yung aking input and plug in ko dun sa ating function. So, yung output natin must be f of 1. So, meron na tayong isang coordinate. We have 1, f of 1. Or simply the input versus the output. Next, if we plug in 5, so yung 5 yung ating input, yung ating output must be f of 5. Now, in this case, meron tayong dalawang coordinates. We have x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. Now, marirecall natin kung ano yung pinagmulan ng formula na to, yung f of x sub 0 plus h minus f of x sub 0 all over h. Ito ay nagmula sa formula ng slope, which is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now, balikan natin yung ating average velocity. F of 5 minus f of 1, this is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over 5 minus 1 or simply x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So again, tandaan, pag kinuha natin yung average velocity, this is just the slope between 2 points. Ano yung 2 points natin na yun? Yung 1, f of 1, and yung 5, f of 5. Now, let's continue. Solve muna natin yung f of 1 saka yung f of 5. Now, f of 1, i-plug in natin yung 1 dun sa ating function. So, magiging f of 1 is equal to 1 plus 3 times 1 minus 2 times 1 squared. And we get 2. Therefore, f of 1 is equal to 2. Next, plug in 5 dun sa ating function. So, lahat ng x palitan ng 5. We get f of 5 is equal to negative 34. Now, isubstitute na natin dun sa ating average velocity. So, we have the average velocity is equivalent to negative 34 minus 2 all over 4. Simplify natin, we have negative 36 divided by 4 or simply negative 9. Therefore, the average velocity of the function on the interval 1, 5 is equal to negative 9. And we're done. Next, syempre meron tayong ilang question dito. Sir, bakit negative yung nakuha natin? What does it mean? Kapag negative yung nakuha nating average velocity, meaning yung object natin is moving downwards. Okay? Next, what if positive yung nakuha natin? So again, yung ating f of x is the position function. So kung yung ating object ay going downward, yung makukuha nating average velocity is negative. Kapag positive naman, ibig sabihin yung ating object is going upward direction. Another question na maitatanong natin is, Sir, gaano kabilis yung object na yon? Now, kapag ang tinatanong is average speed of the object is the absolute value of the average velocity. Now, in this case, gaano kabilis yung ating object? It should be 9 units per whatever, seconds, minutes, or an hour. Okay? Now, let's move on to our second example. Find the average velocity of the function c of t is equal to t squared plus 100 on the interval 2, 4. Again, yung first thing na kailangan nating hanapin is yung starting time. Starting time, saan siya nag-start? Yun yung ating x of 0. And yung x of 0 natin must be equal to 2. Next, how much is the elapsed time? From 2 to 4, we have 4 minus 2 or simply yung h natin is equal to 2. Now, pwede natin gamitin yung formula para sa average velocity. So, we have the average velocity is equal to f of x of 0 plus h minus f of x of 0 all over h. Next, isubstitute na natin lahat ng values na meron tayo. We have the average velocity or the slope between 2 points is equal to f of 2 plus 2 minus f of 2 all over 2. Now, coincidence lang yan na puro yan 2. Simplify natin, we get f of 4 minus f of 2 all over 4 minus 2. Again, this is just the formula for the slope. Now, solve muna natin yung f of 2. So, ang tendency, lahat ng t ay papalitan natin ng 2. We have c of 2 is equal to 104. Kasi yung 2 squared is 4 plus 100 is 104. Next, solve din natin yung value ng f of 4. So, lahat ng t, papalitan natin ng 4. We have c of 4 is equal to 116. This is 16 plus 100. Next, is-substitute na natin. We have 116 minus 104 all over 2. Or simply 6. Therefore, the average velocity of this function on the interval 2, 4 is equal to 6. And we're done. Next, let's move on to instantaneous velocity. So, after ng average velocity, doon naman tayo sa instantaneous velocity. We know already what is average velocity. Average velocity is equivalent to f of x of 0 plus h minus f of x of 0 all over h. Now, recall na ito ay average velocity. Now, yung average velocity, ang kinukuha natin dito is how fast is that object moving in a certain interval. For example, 2 seconds and 5 seconds. So, meron tayong elapsed time na 3 seconds. After 2 seconds and 5 seconds, gaano siya kabilis? So, yun yung ating average velocity. Now, yung instantaneous velocity ay medyo kakaiba. Ang kukunin natin dito, how fast is that object at that instant? For example, meron tayong object na nagmo-move, pwedeng upward, pwedeng downward, and after 5 seconds, gaano siya kabilis at that instant? Ito ngayon yung question. If h is our time, then how much time elapses in an instant? Is it 0.001 second? Or 0.0000001 second? Or 0.000 forever and 1 sa dulo seconds? Now, h cannot be equal to 0. Pero yung h is super close to 0. Yun ang instant. Now, gaano kabilis yung instant? Ito ay super close to 0. Pero not equal to 0. Now, meron ba tayong method para magawa yon? Yung h natin is approaching to 0. And the answer is, meron syempre. So, yung ating instantaneous velocity is equivalent to the limit of f of x of 0 plus h minus f of x of 0 all over h as h approaches to 0. And this is also known as the instantaneous rate of change. Again, recall muna natin yung concept. When we say average velocity, it is the slope of a curve between 2 points. So, given 2 points or an interval. When we say instantaneous velocity, it is the slope of a curve at a single point. Now, why is this important? So, bakit importante na malaman natin yung instantaneous rate of change? For example, meron kang glass. Next, meron kang object na ibinalibag dun sa glass. And you know, after 5 seconds, tatama siya dun sa iyong glass. Now, gaano kabilis yung object after 5 seconds? Hindi kayang ibigay sa atin yun nung average velocity lang. Ang makapagbigay sa atin nun is yung instantaneous velocity. So, how fast is that object moving at that moment? Now, kung makukompute natin yun, makukompute din natin yung force ng object, and then masasabi natin kung tatagal ba yung glass na ginawa natin para ma-absorb yung impact. And yung concept na to is usually in physics. Kaya nga karamihan ng topic sa physics is actually application of calculus. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have some example. Example number 1. Given the position curve, s of t is equal to 20 minus 4t squared, the question is determine the instantaneous velocity at 1 second and after 3 seconds. Since instantaneous velocity yung nahanap natin, ang gagamitin ng formula is the instantaneous velocity is equivalent to the limit of s of t sub 0 plus h minus s of t sub 0 all over h as h approaches to 0. Na kung mapapansin, kung s of t yung aking given, so s of t sub 0 plus h yan. Kung ito ay f of x, ito ay f of x sub 0 plus h. Okay? Now, imbis na gamitin natin yung instantaneous velocity kada isang time, much better na kunin natin yung instantaneous velocity at any time. I know for sure, nagawa na natin to before. So, ito yung kanyang formula. Wala tayo ditong t sub 0. Ang gagamitin natin is yung original function. So, we have the limit of s of t plus h minus s of t all over h as h approaches to 0. So, ito yung gagamitin natin. Now, para lang to yung concept ng slope of a tangent line on a curve at any point. Dun sa concept na yun, pag nakuha natin yung slope at any given point at binigyan tayo ng isang point, i-plug in lang natin kung ano yung variable x and we're done. So, ganun din yung gagawin natin dito. So, therefore, ang kukunin natin ngayon is yung instantaneous velocity at any given time. So, ang kailangan natin dito is s of t. Yun ang pinakamadaling part, yun yung ating given. Next, kailangan makuha yung s of t plus h. Meaning, lahat ng variable t papalitan natin ng t plus h. So, magiging 20 minus 4 times t plus h squared. Simplify natin, we have s of t plus h is equal to 20 minus 4t squared minus 8th minus 4h squared. Now, i-substitute na natin, we get the limit of 20 minus 4t squared minus 80h minus 4h squared minus 20 minus 4t squared all over h as h approaches to 0. Now, if we plug in h is equal to 0, kung mapapansin, magiging 0 over 0 yan. And that's a problem. So, ano yung goal natin? I-cancel out muna natin yung h. Now, kung mapapansin dito sa ating given, maraming maka-cancel dyan. Like yung 20. Ito ay positive 20, ito ay negative 20 pag dinistribute natin yung negative sign. So, 0 lang yan. Another is yung negative 40 squared, saka itong positive 40 squared. Bakit naging positive? Kasi negative times negative. So, ano na lang yung matitira? Negative 8th minus 4h squared. Next, factor out natin yung h. So, magiging h multiplied by negative 8t minus 4h all over h as h approaches to 0. Now, we can now cancel h. So, wala na mag-0 sa denominator. We can now let h is equal to 0. Therefore, yung ating instantaneous velocity at any given time is equal to negative 8t. Now, kung ang gusto nating makuha, what is the instantaneous velocity at 1 second? Let t is equal to 1. So, we have negative 8 times 1 or simply negative 8. And we're done. Now, how about the instantaneous velocity at 3 seconds? So, let t is equal to 3. So, we have negative 8 times 3 or simply negative 24. And we're done. Now, let's move on to our second example. Given the function y is equals to 1 over 4x squared or simply f of x is equal to 1 over 4x squared and the values of x sub 0 is equals to 4 and x sub 3 is equal to 6. Now, find the following. Letter A, the average rate of change of y with respect to x over the interval x sub 0, x sub 3. Letter B, the instantaneous rate of change of y with respect to x at x sub 0. Letter C, the slope of the tangent line at x sub 3. Now, let's have the solution for letter A. First thing to do, kailangan alam muna natin kung ano yung interval ng x sub 0, x sub 3. And given naman siya, yung x sub 0 natin ay 4 at yung x sub 3 natin must be 6. So, yung ating interval is 4, 6. Next, gagamitin natin yung ating formula kasi ang tanong is average rate of change or simply the average velocity. So, we have f of x sub 0 plus h minus f of x sub 0 all over h. Next, we need to find the starting time and the starting time must be x sub 0 or simply yun yung 4. Doon siya mag-start. Next, yung elapsed time natin from 4 to 6. So, yung elapsed time ay 6 minus 4 or simply 2. Therefore, yung h natin must be equal to 2. Next, substitute na natin doon sa ating average velocity. We have f of 4 plus 2 minus f of 4 all over 2. Next, we need to get the value of f of 4. Therefore, let x be equal to 4 and we get f of 4 is equal to 4. Because 4 squared is 16 divided by 4 is 4. Next, kailangan din natin makuha yung value ng f of 4 plus 2 or f of 6. Now, let x be equal to 6. So, we have 6 squared is 36 divided by 4 or simply f of 6 natin is equal to 9. Next, substitute na natin. We have 9 minus 4 all over 2. 9 minus 4 is equal to 5 all over 2. Therefore, the average rate of change of y with respect to x over the interval 4, 6 is equivalent to 5 over 2. And we're done. Next, let's have letter B. So, letter B natin, the question is, what is the instantaneous rate of change of y with respect to x at x sub 0? Now, since instantaneous rate of change yung kailangan natin, now yung tip ko dito kapag instantaneous rate of change or instantaneous velocity, ang kunin na natin is yung instantaneous velocity at any given time. Okay? So, we have the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches to 0. Now, f of x, ano yung value niya? Yan yung pinakamadali. Ito yung ating given. We have f of x is equal to 1 over 4 times x squared. Next, kailangan din natin makuha yung value ng f of x plus h. So, we have f of x plus h is equal to 1/4 times x plus h squared. Simplify natin, we get 1/4 x squared plus 1/2 xh plus 1/4 h squared. Next, isubstitute na natin. We have the limit of 1/4 x squared plus 1/2 xh plus 1/4 h squared minus 1/4 x squared all over h as h approaches to 0. Next, automatic meron tayong makikita na nakakancel. Isa na doon yung ating 1/4 x squared saka yung negative 1/4 x squared. Next, ano yung kailangan gawin? Factor out natin yung h. We have h multiplied by 1/2 x plus 1/4 h all over h. Pwede natin i-cancel out yung h. Next, since wala nang magzi-0 sa denominator, we can now let h be equal to 0 and we get the instantaneous velocity at any given point is equivalent to 1/2 x. Now, ano yung goal natin? We need to find the instantaneous rate of change or the instantaneous velocity of y with respect to x at x sub 0. Ano ba yung x sub 0 natin? Yun ay 4. So, let x be equal to 4. So, we have 1/2 times 4 or simply 2. And we're done. Next, let's move on to letter C. So, yung question sa letter C, what is the slope of the tangent line at x sub 3? Since nakuha na natin yung instantaneous rate of change or simply the slope of that curve at any given point, so pwede natin siyang gamitin. So, yung given natin, x sub 3 is equal to 6 and yung ating instantaneous rate of change or simply yung slope of the tangent line at any given point is simply 1/2 x. So again, yung 1/2 x na yan is also the slope of the tangent line at any given point. Now, paano natin makukuha yung slope ng tangent line at x sub 3? So let x be equal to 6 kasi yung x sub 3 natin is equal to 6. So we have the slope is equal to 1/2 x. X becomes 6. So we have 1/2 times 6 or simply 3. So the slope of the tangent line at x sub 3 is equal to 3. And we're done. Now let's move on to our last example. So we have a rocket is propelled upward and reaches a height in kilometers of h of t is equal to 9.8 t squared in t seconds. Now, yung goal natin hanapin is letter A, how high does it reach in 20 seconds? Letter B, what is the average velocity of the rocket during the first 20 seconds? And letter C, what is the instantaneous velocity of the rocket at 20 seconds? And also, instantaneous velocity of the rocket after 30 seconds. Let's have the solution for letter A. So, how high does it reach in 20 seconds? Now, since yung given sa atin is yung height ng rocket in t seconds, ito yung h of t is equal to 9.8 t squared. Meaning, pag nag-plug in tayo ng t, ang ibibigay sa atin yan is yung height ng ating rocket. So, ang kailangan natin dito is how does it reach in 20 seconds. So, let t is equal to 20, plug in natin sa ating formula, we get h of 20 is equal to 9.8 multiplied by 20 squared, or simply, h of t, or ito yung height after 20 seconds, and this is equivalent to 3,920 kilometers. Bakit kilometers? Kasi yung unit natin dito sa height ay kilometers. And letter A, we're done. Next, let's move on to letter B. Letter B naman is what is the average velocity of the rocket during the first 20 seconds? Now, since ang kailangan natin dito is the average velocity, dapat meron tayong starting time at meron tayong ending time. So, ano ngayon yung ating starting time? Siyempre, yung starting time natin is at t, o yung time natin is equal to 0. So, we have let t is equal to 0. So, we have 9.8 times 0 squared, or simply 0 kilometers. Siyempre, 0 yung time, hindi ka pa yun umaalis, so hindi ka pa tumataas, yung rocket mo nandun pa lang sa ibaba. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and find the average velocity of the rocket during the first 20 seconds. So, yung formula natin is f of 0 plus 20 minus f of 0 all over 20. Ito yung initial height. Ito yung height niya after 20 seconds all over yung time natin, which is 20 seconds. Okay? Now, substitute natin yung ating values. Yung f of 20 natin is 3,920 minus f of 0 natin, ito yung initial height, which is 0, all over 20. Simplify natin, 3,920 divided by 20, we have the average velocity of that rocket is equivalent to 196. Now, ano ngayon yung unit niyan? Yung unit natin must be kilometers per seconds. And we're done. Next, let's move on to letter C. So, yung letter C natin, the question is, what is the instantaneous velocity of the rocket at 20 seconds and at 30 seconds? So, kapag instantaneous velocity, ang kukunin na natin is yung instantaneous velocity at any given time. So, we have the limit of h of t plus h minus h of t all over h. And yung h of t natin, yun yung pinakamadali, yun yung given, 9.8 t squared. Now, kailangan hanapin din yung h of t plus h. So, we have h of t plus h is equivalent to 9.8 multiplied by t plus h squared. Simplify natin, we have 9.8 t squared plus 19.6 th plus 9.8 h squared. Now, isubstitute na natin dun sa ating limit. We have 9.8 t squared plus 19.6 th plus 9.8 h squared minus 9.8 t squared all over h as h approaches to 0. Now, meron tayong makakancel kagaya nung 9.8 t squared. Isang positive, isang negative, cancel na yan. Next, ano pa yung goal natin? I-factor out natin yung h para makancel natin para hindi na mag-0 yung denominator. So, we got h multiplied by 19.60 plus 9.8h all over h as h approaches to 0. Now, yung h pwede nang i-cancel out. Also, pwede na rin nating i-let yung h be equal to 0 kasi wala nang 0 over 0 yan. So, we have the instantaneous velocity at any given time is equivalent to 19.6 t. Now, anong yung goal natin? We need to find the instantaneous velocity of the rocket at 20 seconds. So, let t is equal to 20. Substitute natin, we have the instantaneous velocity after 20 seconds is equivalent to 19.6 times 20, or simply 392 kilometers per seconds. And we're done. Now, doon naman tayo sa pangalawa. The instantaneous velocity of the rocket at 30 seconds. So, nung pinalipad yung rocket, after 30 seconds, 28, 29, 30, gaano siya kabilis at that instant. So, yung gagawin natin, let t is equal to 30, and then isubstitute natin yung 30 dun sa ating instantaneous velocity at any given time. So, we have 19.6 times 30, or simply, instantaneous velocity after 30 seconds is equal to 588 km per seconds. And we're done.